I'm actually getting pretty hungry to taste this. The unfortunate part is that it's tomatoes. Seems like a waste of a perfectly good pie, honestly. Hello, thank you for stopping by. I'm so glad you're here. This is a copy of a recipe book that was handwritten by my grandmother's grandmother a century ago in 1926. And it is a collection of her favorite special occasion recipes that she wanted to record and pass down to her daughters so that they would stay in the family and get passed down from generation to generation. And obviously, it worked because here I am a century later and I still have these recipes. They still exist in our family, although I don't think anybody has made one of them in quite some time. I did try a chicken pie recipe from here with mixed results, but I wanted to try a tomato pie recipe, and at first that seems a little bit odd until you realize that it is a sweet tomato pie, and then it seems really odd. I have seen a few recipes for tomato pie that is savory, never for any that are sweet. So I wanted to give this recipe a try and see what we get, because obviously at one point one of my ancestors thought that recipe was special enough that she wanted to record it for the ages. The way these recipes are written out, it is just like somebody telling you how they make it. This is not written like a standardized recipe. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of investigating to figure out what's what. We're going to start the recipe by scalding and peeling ripe tomatoes, which I have done. I wanted to use heirloom tomatoes to be a little bit more accurate, but my grocery store was out of them, so I went with beefsteak, and the cores on them are pretty substantial, but I'm gonna have to cut around those. Next, we're going to line a pudding pan with rich biscuit dough that has been rolled thin. Now, there's a couple of things here to unpack. A, what is a pudding pan? And B, what is rich biscuit dough? Both of them I figured out in the chicken pie video. So a pudding pan is going to be like a casserole dish, or just basically a deeper pan. I'm using this cake pan actually for my tomato pie pudding pan. And a rich biscuit dough is basically just going to be a biscuit dough, but it's telling you don't be cheap and just use water. Use milk, use the good milk. Don't cheap out on this one because it's something special. It's a rich biscuit dough. It's not an everyday workaday biscuit dough. So I'm using a recipe from Snowdrift Shortening for Southern Tea Biscuits from 1928. So it was roughly contemporary with this this recipe book. And I chose Snowdrift Shortening because one of the pictures on the front has a little thing of was an advertisement from Snowdrift Shortening. So I knew they were using it at the time, or at least were aware of it. That biscuit recipe is 2 cups of flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, that's a lot of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, a tablespoon of sugar, 3 tablespoons of shortening, and 3/4 cup of milk or water. We're making a rich biscuit dough, so we're using the good milk. We're not cheaping out and using water. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees, a moderate heat. We're going to cover the bottom of the pan with the biscuit dough that has been rolled thin. Then we're going to add a layer of sliced tomatoes, sugar, and butter, which seems bizarre. Then we're going to add a layer of dumplings, and this one threw me for a loop. What do they mean by dumplings? It's not clear. I looked around, and there is a recipe for cornmeal dumplings in here that is cooked in the same water that you cooked meat, and it just generally seems really savory and kind of meaty, and it seemed completely inappropriate for this recipe. So I racked my brain a little bit, and it became super obvious to me. My mom always made chicken and dumplings, and what she meant by dumplings was to take spoonfuls of biscuit dough, drop it into the boiling water, and that was the dumplings for chicken and dumplings. I know that that is not a widely acknowledged definition of the word dumpling, but it is the only type of dumpling I knew of growing up was just biscuit dough dropped into boiling water. So thought about it a little bit, and we're already making biscuit dough. You're just gonna add a layer of biscuit in here in the middle. It seems obvious to me, maybe because this is a family recipe. I know a lot of people would never figure that out. All right. We've got our pudding pan. I'm gonna spray this with pan spray, some butter and sugar. Let's get into it. I used 4 large beefsteak tomatoes. I have no idea how many to use. It doesn't say. It would have just been enough tomatoes to fill it up. I have the biscuit dough out. I refrigerated it after I made it. So I have it in 3 parts. I have a top crust, a bottom crust, and the middle crust, aka layer of dumplings. So let's get into this. I'm gonna start by rolling out this bottom crust. And it's pretty easy to work with here. This isn't quite a pie dough. This is biscuit dough. So it's a little bit wetter, stickier, more gluten-y than pie dough, actually. Actually easier to work with, which tracks for my family. Like, I'm not gonna fuss around with something that's fancy and complicated. Just use the easier version of it. Yeah, it's rolling out really well though. I've never rolled out biscuit dough thin like a pie crust, so it's kind of interesting. And of course, it doesn't tell you how big a pudding pan to use. Doesn't tell you how much dough to use. Doesn't tell you how thin to roll it, just to roll it thin, but we're using it like a pie crust. So, yeah. It's rolled fairly thin. I'm just gonna put it in the bottom of the pan and stretch it out to fill the corners. Not that serious. All right, there we go. We got the bottom layer. Time for a layer of tomatoes. This is weird. I mean, listen, I understand. They were homesteaders out on the prairie. They didn't have a lot. They didn't have a Walmart to go to. Fresh produce. They had what they had, and they wanted to try to make get as much variety of food out of it as they could get. So when you have pretty limited ingredients, something like a sweet tomato pie starts making a lot more sense, especially in seasons where there wasn't a lot of like fresh fruit available, and you had a ton of tomatoes, fresh tomatoes that you needed to use up somehow. So we've got the layer of tomatoes. I'm not being fussy about how I arrange them. I'm just getting them on there, and then I'm gonna add the butter. I'm just cutting this butter into little pats. It doesn't really say. It doesn't say how much to use. I'm guessing you're not gonna go over the top crazy with it, but I don't want to underuse either. But I definitely want enough butter and sugar to help cover the tomato flavor. So I'm gonna go a little bit heavy on it. All right, that was about half a stick on this layer. Let's do some sugar. Okay, I've got my 1/4 cup here. I'm guessing that's gonna be way too much per layer. I don't know how many layers I'm gonna get, 2 or 3, because they wouldn't have had as much sugar. They wouldn't have liked things as sweet as we do today. So I used about 1/8 of a cup on this layer of tomatoes and butter and sugar. Maybe 1 large tomato, a 1/4 stick of butter, and 1/8 a cup of sugar on 1 layer. What I'm gonna do is add another layer of tomatoes, then add my dumpling layer, and then finish it off with 2 layers of tomatoes and then the top crust. For dumplings, I'm just tearing off little pieces of the biscuit dough and I'm spreading it around. This technique for making pie actually looks kind of interesting. It might make really tasty pies. And I was looking through this recipe book and I saw a recipe for sweet potato cobbler that uses this exact same technique, except it's sliced sweet potatoes in place of the sliced tomatoes. And why they call it a cobbler in that recipe and a pie in this one, I don't know. But I also noticed that this is very similar to the technique she used for the chicken pie. So it seems like this was a base format she used to build a lot of different dishes off of. Okay, that's my dumpling layer. Let's do some more tomatoes. Honestly, this might not be bad savory. If I were using no sugar, but some like cheese. Okay, a little bit more butter. I'm actually getting pretty hungry to taste this. The unfortunate part is that it's tomatoes. Seems like a waste of a perfectly good pie, honestly. Oh, sugar. More sugar, and finish it off with my remaining tomatoes. A few more pats of butter in here, because why not? I don't know, I hope I'm not throwing good butter after bad. And then finish it off with some more sugar. So I've got a full 1/2 cup of sugar in here. And nutmeg. A little bit of nutmeg. Nutmeg, tomatoes, and sugar. A classic combination. Yikes. Okay, you go over there, you go over there. It says to pour hot water on top of this. I'm not. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know. I do have a little bit of tomato juice I'm going to pour on top. I poured hot water on top of the chicken pie and I regretted every second of it. I'm not going to do it again. Whatever that did, whatever it meant, if that was to try to heat things up quicker in their oven, and maybe it stayed in their ovens for a long time to where it dried out a lot more. I don't know, but I've got a modern oven that gets hot, stays hot. I honestly suspect it would have something to do with the oven not being very hot and having to stay in there a long time to cook and then getting dried out. But I'm not feeding a like a wood-fired oven or something. So let's roll out this top crust. Working with biscuit dough is so much easier than working with pie dough. If this tastes good, I might use it as my my pie crust recipe going forward. So let's add this on, stretch it out to fit. Tuck in the sides, put little holes in the top, add some more sugar on top of the crust, and maybe just a little bit of nutmeg on top for color. All right, into the oven it goes for until question marks. I'm gonna give it 30 minutes, an hour, who knows? I actually set the timer for 45 minutes, which is a long bake, but I think that might be a good amount of time. We'll see. Taking pie out the oven. Okay. It smells delicious. Just kind of like sweet pastry crust and a little bit of nutmeg. And is that light too bright? Okay, I think. Let me turn that light down. So this cake, this pie, oh, I got close. There's a little bit of tomato smell. It's a bit odd. Okay. Mostly it just smells like a sweet kind of toasty pastry with a little bit of nutmeg. You get in close and the tomatoey smell hits the nose and it's quite frankly unpleasant. Odd, weird. All right, let's go in for a bite and see how this works out. The crust is nice and crusty. It smells sugary and tomatoey. It's a family recipe. I've got to remember that. Family recipe. It is really wet inside. I am very glad I didn't add water. Adding water would have been a bad choice. Maybe it's oily. Maybe I added too much butter. I don't know. Let's see. It's wet. It's goopy. I wouldn't use the word appetizing to describe it. Whatever the trick is to making this, I didn't get it because this is clearly can't be how it was meant to come out. Especially considering that it wanted me to add an entire extra cup of liquid. What was so dry? What was supposed to be soaking up all this liquid? I didn't add the extra liquid because I knew this was going to happen. I don't know, was I supposed to be adding like a lot more dough? Am I completely misinterpreting dumplings here? I don't think so. Anywho, but let's go in, moisture content aside, maybe the tomatoes are a little bit different. Maybe if I'd used heirloom tomatoes, they wouldn't have been as juicy. I don't know. All of that aside, let's go in and let's give it a taste. So I'm trying to get a good balance of tomato and crust. Cheers. Maybe I should have let it cool completely before I cut into it. I get it. Okay, I get it. Never gonna make it again. I understand why you would have this as an option. You're out on the prairie, limited variety, you wanted something different. I can even understand how this would be something special, unique. It's not something I'm going back to. It's genuinely not. A lot more sugar would really help. I used half a cup in here. I bet doubling that would help a lot. That middle crust dumpling is not bad. Don't hate it. I should have gone a little bit thicker and bigger with them so they would be fluffier. That would probably have soaked up more moisture. Sugar, butter, biscuits, it's a winning combination. It's all in there to drown out the tomato. The less you taste the tomato, the better the pie is. Using biscuit dough as a pie crust is really smart, and I'm gonna do that more. I actually really like this base idea of a layer of biscuit dough rolled thin like a pie crust, a layer of filling, a middle layer of biscuit dumplings, another layer of filling, and then a layer of biscuit dough rolled thin like a pie crust. I like that format. I'm going to repeat it, use it for future things. I might come back and try the sweet potato cobbler, which is made the same way. The biscuit by itself with the tomato juice soaked up into it is actually really tasty. It's just the pieces of tomato are bizarre. Oh. Ah. Okay. When it's just a piece of tomato by itself, it really hits you. So it's a no for me, dog. I am an easy mark. I'm very, very lenient towards food. There's a lot of bizarre things that I don't think are great that I'm very lenient towards. And this only makes sense if you're out on the prairie with limited resources and you are desperate for some variety. Then I can see you throwing this in as a special occasion. Other than that, all right, in the interest of being as fair as possible as I can to this pie, I decided to let it cool completely. So it is later in the evening, and it did come to a pretty good set once it cooled down completely. So you can see that. Can you see? So once it cooled, and this side that I cut with it cool, you can kind of see the layers. It's a little bit more firmly set. There's not liquid running everywhere. As opposed to this side that I cut while it was still hot, and it became a squishy mess. So that's the trick. That's the trick I'm missing, is to let it cool completely before I cut into it. So I will know when I try this technique again in the future. I'm gonna give it one more taste just to see if all the flavors melded together to do anything better. And I am only being this generous to this pie because it is a family recipe. If this was any other recipe, I would not be giving it so many chances. Sweet tomato pie. Final try just to give it its best shot possible. That was the messiest, most disgusting bite ever. Yeah, it is definitely better completely cooled and set, but that's not saying much. The verdict stands. I understand why they did it when they had very little and they were trying to get some diversity of flavors. It's not the most horrible thing I've ever eaten. Just not for me. Probably not for you either, but feel free to try. Let me know if you'd like me to go back and try maybe some other recipes from here, maybe the sweet potato one. There's a grape pie recipe. There's some cornmeal dumplings, fried green tomatoes, stuff like that. There's some other recipes that sound genuinely tasty that I might try. But that's all for today's video. If you have liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have not already, please subscribe so you will be here for next week's video, where I am doing a showdown of quiche recipes, one from Campbell's Soup and one from Julia Child. I found in this cookbook, I found a recipe for quiche that uses Campbell's condensed cheddar soup. And I thought that would be real interesting, and I wanted to compare it to another recipe at the time, contemporary Julia Child French chef recipe, to see which one comes out on top. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the future.